Josh Shiloh singing An die Musik by Franz Schubert. Thank you, Josh. Welcome and good morning. Welcome to the UU Church of Greater Lynn and our annual meeting this morning. We're going to be recording the meeting, but we are not live streaming it. In this gathering, may our spirits be renewed. In this community of ideals, may we remember the principles that guide us and reflect upon those things that give meaning to our lives, renewing our dedication to serve the highest that we know. On this special Sunday when we practice our congregational way of life, inherited by the generations of the Free Church, may we give thanks for this community and this life of faith we are blessed to share. We light this chalice this morning particularly to honor all who have served this congregation this year in leadership, in fellowship, carrying and holding the concerns of this congregation dear to your heart, holding its responsibility and stewardship with you at many sleepless hours, through many hours of conversations, many hours of meetings, and your wholehearted dedication. We thank you, and you know who you are. Let's respond by affirming the unison affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth, its sacrament, and service, its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. So may it be.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Okay. The 2024 annual meeting of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn will now come to order. I'm Mary Gatlin, Parish President. Jack Butterworth, our Parish Clerk, will keep minutes of the meeting. Now I would like to ask Jack to review the rules of procedure for today's meeting.
In compliance with our bylaws, I posted a notice of this meeting at least 7 days prior to the meeting, and the notice was also read from the pulpit. According to the bylaws, 15 members entitled to vote constitutes a quorum. If you are a member of the church, can you please raise your hand? A quorum is present, so we can begin the meeting.
All right, the first item of business today is to accept the 2024 annual report, which is available at the back of the sanctuary on the table as you are walking in. It includes the minutes of the 2023 annual meeting. Do I hear a motion to accept the 2024 annual report? And a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, the annual report is accepted. Thank you.
Dave and Paula Innes and Joshua Shiloh, would you be so kind as to join us up front here? Here in this church and in the Lynn and Swampscott congregations that merged to become the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn, human beings have gathered for centuries, seeking a higher purpose and deeper life than they could find alone. We are grateful today for each of you who have joined that community, that you found your way here. You were brought here as a child, and that you have decided to make a commitment to this faith community.
Some of you are relatively new to the community, and some of you have been coming for a very long time. You all share a desire to deepen your commitment to UUCGL by officially joining the church. This commitment demonstrates that you wish to be formally associated with this body, to consider the well-being of this congregation part of your own well-being. It is a decision that you did not make lightly and that you will not abandon lightly. It confers upon you the right to vote in congregational meetings. It means that you may someday be asked to serve on the governing board and thereby be a chief decision maker and steward on behalf of the congregation.
To become a member of the church means to embrace its ministry as your own. We hope that as a member of this church, you will allow yourselves to become more deeply known and to know others, that you will both minister to and be ministered unto, and that you will love and be loved.
The relationships we form in our church are based on needs of the soul, needs that render each of us vulnerable and therefore reliant on each other's grace and goodness and generosity of spirit. As members of this church, we pledge to be guardians of each other's spirits, to respect the ultimate privacy of each one's human struggle, and to believe in each one's inherent dignity. We are guided by the words of our covenant, our unison affirmation that reminds us that love is our doctrine and that we believe that we are all growing into harmony with the divine.
I welcome all of you on behalf of the Board of Trustees, the ministers, the staff, and the congregation, all of which have played a part in your path to membership. I now invite members of the congregation to share the words of welcome found in your order of service under the congregational affirmation. We, the members of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn, welcome you in the spirit of our covenant to love, to worship together and cultivate reverence, to take seriously our individual and collective efforts towards spiritual growth and ethical commitment, and to serve human need. May we care for one another and our church with open minds and generous hearts.
We welcome you to this community with all our hearts and extend to you now the right hand of fellowship, which is a simple handshake, but the right hand of fellowship is a tradition that goes back many, many centuries. It is extended at ordinations and installations and in the welcome of new members in congregationally based churches. And so, welcome, Dave. Welcome. Welcome, Paula. Welcome, Josh, officially. Today we don't have words from you, but we hope that we will hear from you. Very literal, we have heard from you, sir, in many ways. We do have some gifts, and this is a sketch of the church that was made in the 23 program year, but we are in the 23-24 program year, so it is still appropriate. We hope that you will display this somewhere in your house. There's also a little mug in there because we know you're caffeine operated. And there is a prayer book for you too. Welcome. Thank you. Welcome. Yeah. And you can go sit down. Oh, yeah, be careful.
The next item of business is the election of trustees and officers. In a moment, Jack will present the recommendations of the board. I want to note that UUCGL bylaws call for 5 officer trustees and up to 6 additional elected trustees. We are asking the congregation to make an exception, as this year's slate of nominees is an unusual one. The role of president, as of now, is unfilled, as are the roles of vice president and past president. What we're seeing today, and what many churches are experiencing, is a reflection of a certain degree of volunteer burnout. Simply put, we need more people to step up and volunteer to share the gift of their time with this church. But we also need a lay leadership structure that is more flexible and encourages more people to be involved in ways that fit into their busy lives. This summer, the trustees that you're electing today, with Reverend Vicky's support, We'll be looking at how the board operates and how tasks that were historically shouldered by the president and vice president can be more evenly divided among all of the board members. Maybe it will look like a presidency that rotates throughout the year, or maybe there will be co-presidents. But I am confident that this group of smart, committed volunteers will accomplish their goals and be the steady leaders that this congregation deserves. Please consider what role you might take on when it comes to keeping our congregation vibrant and engaged. Now, Jack, would you please read the slate of nominees to the congregation?
This year's slate of nominees is as follows: Treasurer, Sarah Cecil; Clerk, Jack Butterworth; At-large trustees, Francine Amari Faulkner through 2026, Nikki Buscemi through 2025, Evan Katz through 2025, Mark Shiloh through 2025, Tom Billings through 2027.
Do I hear a motion to elect the nominees? A second? All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The nominees have been elected. I would now like to ask our newly re-elected treasurer, Sarah Cecil, to say a few words.
Thank you. Good morning. This is the first time in my memory that the treasurer has been asked to speak at our annual meeting. So I'm really pleased to be able to talk with you today. I think that having more information about our finances will help us make better decisions about the future of the church. I'm going to touch on a few of the highlights, but if you're interested in the details, please look at the finance and investment section of the annual report package. And I would be happy, more than happy, to answer any questions after the service today or at any point in time. So, on to the numbers. This current fiscal year, we expect to spend close to $900,000 on operations. The total operating budget for the coming fiscal year that starts on July 1st is about $800,000. In addition, more than $200,000 is budgeted for charitable grants and scholarships next year. So let's pause for a second and let those numbers sink in. $800,000 for operations and more than $200,000 for grants and scholarships. That's a lot of money, and it's a big responsibility for a church of 130 some odd members. Almost 90% of that operating budget and virtually all of our grants and scholarships are funded by our endowment investments. Next year, for the first time in many years, we will withdraw 4% of our endowment funds for our operating expenses, grants, and scholarships. That's an increase of 0.25%. The board approved this increase as a one-time measure to get us through the coming year. However, even with increased withdrawals, we are not able to fund many of the building improvements and repairs and upgrades that we would like to undertake. The long-term financial stability of this church requires thoughtful and realistic reconsideration of our vision of ministry and operations. And I would add that also includes consideration of our volunteerism. There's a combination of factors that are impacting our finances: reduced pledging, a lower 3-year average market value for our investments. And I know right at the moment that we are looking at very high stock market, but we do a rolling average when we do our calculation. So we're including past years that were not as favorable. We've substantially depleted our sinking fund to pay the costs of maintaining this building, which is getting older. And like everybody else, we're seeing the impacts of inflation. However, thanks to the generosity of those who donated funds to this church in past years, and thanks to those who stewarded those funds through careful investment, we are fortunate to have a large endowment of about $24 million that allows us to continue to provide the ministry, music, faith development, and other programs that we value so much in our church. We also have an outstanding staff, a wonderful building that will continue to serve us for many years if we maintain it carefully, and all of you. So let me just take a moment to acknowledge some of our endowment donors. This year's church operations were made possible in part by the generosity of the following: Callista Brackett, George Brackett, George Herbert Breed, William Burrell, Annie Donald, Clara Frazier, Ira Haskell, Julia Hood, Benjamin N. Johnson, Romilly Johnson, John McIntyre, Mary Elizabeth Arthur and Timothy Newhall, Margaret Sheldon, Dr. Russell Firth Sheldon, Arnold Reynolds, James Sargent, Lydia Sargent Lee, Grace Sporong, Helen Stetson, Ellsworth A. Stone, and the Teachers Association of the Universalist Church School, and many other anonymous donors, long gone, who made it possible for us to be here in this church today. And with that, I turn it back over to Mary.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I felt like it was important to read the names of previous donors who are long gone because they really laid the foundation for why we are able to operate like we can today. Now, Reverend Vicky and I would like to take a few minutes to acknowledge some of the people who have helped make this year a success. I'm curious, just with a show of hands, how many of you have served on UUCGL's board, or a board committee, or a ministry team? Come on, let's see it. Wow. Now, please take a moment and just look around you. You saw all those hands, right? This is what congregational polity looks like. There's no bishop telling us what programs we have to offer or who our leaders must be. Congregational polity looks like all of you showing up, helping organize and teach programs you care about, electing lay leaders, and being committed to understanding how the church operates. Thank you, all of you, for leading by example. I started coming to UUCGL about 7.5 years ago when we had just moved here from across the country. I wanted to be part of a progressive community that would provide a buffer from some of the awful things that were happening in politics and the world. And that feels eerily familiar today. And I wanted to explore what spirituality meant to me without being told what I was supposed to believe. I would imagine a lot of you are here for similar reasons. About 6 months after my first visit, I joined the Faith Development Ministry team. Frankly, because I just wanted to make some friends, and it seemed like they had a lot of fun together, and it is true, we do. One of the things I love about this church is that if you want to be part of a group, all you have to do is find out when they're meeting and then show up. It is that simple. And I joined the board 4 years ago because I realized at that point I was getting much more back from UUCGL than I was putting in. The balance was off, and I wanted to make that right. I did it because I thought I had some skills that I could share, but also out of a sense of obligation, mixed with a bit of peer pressure. And Eileen, if you are watching this recording later, that's for you. Despite an occasionally bumpy road over the past 4 years, I have never regretted saying yes to being asked to join the board. I have had the privilege of getting to know many of you so much more deeply than I would have just chatting at fellowship hour. I have seen your leadership in action, and it has inspired me to be a better leader myself. I want to thank a handful of you in particular and acknowledge that there are many more people who deserve thanks than I have time to name here. First, a huge thank you to my fellow board members, and especially those who are joining me in stepping off the board at the end of this month. Loretta Connolly stayed an extra year beyond her 3-year term and provided me with such steady friendship and guidance while I was president. Kathy Cubby, who is referred to as Saint Kathy in our household, and I'll just leave it at that, and Linda Jones, who shared not only her personal wisdom with me, but also an actual book about governance and ministry that has been incredibly helpful in everything from board orientations to difficult conversations. So I have a couple cards I would like to give to you. Thank you, Linda. This past year, we've had 2 active task forces at UUCGL, and their members have generously given their time and energy to help guide the board. The Stanley School Task Force, made up of Sarah Cecil and Doreen Hodgkin, is hopefully nearing its completion after several years of very complicated and emotionally fraught work. I am so grateful to both of you. And the Reimagining Task Force, made up of Michael Salona, Scott Noka, Doreen Hodgkin, Jack Butterworth, and Francine Amari Faulkner, worked tirelessly for months to identify priorities for improving our physical space, as well as the stewardship of our property. The fact that we cannot, at least this coming fiscal year, fund those projects through endowment income simply highlights our need for internal fundraising, something which I hope to take on in the coming months. Please help me fund these projects which you, the congregation, identified as our highest priorities. I also want to thank the members of our board committees who pay attention to all the church operations regarding properties, finance and investments, and grants. Their work is often invisible, but it is so vital for keeping our vision of ministry on track. On properties, Doreen Hodgkin, Loretta Connolly, Evan Katz, and Dawn Stewart. On finance and investments, Cliff Charney, Sarah Cecil, Bob Diodario, Rebecca Green, and Evan Katz, as well as Jim Peterson and Tim Zimmer, who both left the committee earlier this year after collectively serving for more than 20 years. And our members of the Grants Committee, Claudia Luck, Mindy Salona, Cliff Charney, Liz Dunnigan, and Chris Hansen, who have collectively given away over $200,000 in grants this past year. You may have noticed that many of the same names are coming up in these lists. We have remarkable, dedicated lay leaders, but we need some new names to thank. Please, if you have the capacity to serve on one of these committees, come talk to me or Reverend Vicky, and we can connect you with someone who can tell you when and where to show up for the next meeting. In the last few years, there's been a lot of talk and concern about an epidemic of loneliness and isolation. I look around this room and I see the cure right here. Opt in, people. It is the only way to do it. Finally, I want to thank Reverend Vicky. You have provided me with such steady and thoughtful guidance during my time on the board, encouraging me and providing the occasional reality check when I needed it most. I am grateful to have you as my minister.
Mary, you used the word steady to describe my support of you as the board president. That's a compliment I want to return right back to you. One of the reasons I'm eager to help our board figure out how to fill the president's role or to share it is that I rely very much on the wisdom, humor, warmth, and perspective of strong board presidents like you to consult with me and advise, commiserate, and strategize together all manner of issues relating to our church. You have been a tremendous partner in this role. My first call to check a draft of something or to consider a development in various group dynamics or decisions. A caring leader advocating for my time off and other healthy self-care practices. Someone to keep things in perspective with. You have done an exemplary job in this role. We will sorely miss your steady hand at the pilot's wheel of this vessel. A bit of a repeat of my my minister's report, and I want to ask you all, and this sounds a little corny, I know, but if you would take this annual report home with you and make an iced coffee or beverage of your choice and really read through it with spiritual care and attention and absorb the kind of commitment that is communicated through these pages by all of these people who have submitted reports and beautiful pictures as well, and all of the names that they invoke in thanks. There is so much here. I want you to know who these people are. If you are these people, I want you to read what you wrote and take into your own heart how much you have committed to this church and to celebrate it. And we'll continue to celebrate it with each other because there is so much good in here. And I don't want you to miss that. The parish minister role at UUCGL is the spiritual, programmatic, and administrative head of operations, overseeing all of these, but of course delegating much of this work to an excellent staff and committed lay volunteers, the members of the church. This must be a partnership. It has to be collaborative. It must be relational, because churches are above all about relationships. That's what makes us countercultural. Churches are about being in covenant to learn, serve, and abide together in times of joy and sorrow alike, grounded in the local community, responsive to this particular moment in history. And what a few moments it's been. As Robert Louis Stevenson says in his prayer for my family, down to the gates of death, loyal and loving to one another. And you know, this is what makes me a more parish minister than executive director ever. When I think about the program year of 2023-24, I think about all the death that we have experienced, all the losses, the grief that we have shared. Even though we did lots of important institutional business, the relationships there was a lot of sadness. What will stay with me most about 23-24 is not the business that we did, but the people that we said goodbye to and welcomed as ancestor spirits of this church. Ray King, and I see their faces as I name them. Sarah Drury, Will Boynton, Barbara Holinsky, John Benson, and just this past week, Lenny Lundstrom. We say in traditional wedding ceremonies that those whom God hath joined, let no one put asunder. As members and friends in spiritual community, regardless of all the programs and politics and building issues and budgets and meeting minutes and forums and fairs, we are ultimately here to model what it looks like to come together and humbly consent to be made a people by the power of the Spirit of love. We're being shaped. We're being formed. We're being made a people all the time. Every one of those names I just invoked have their lifeblood in this church. They all spent countless hours sitting in these chairs and in the pews of the Universalist Church and the Unitarian Church, attending meetings of committees on the phone, in coffee hour, at Ferry Beach, talking late into the night with their spouses about the church and its affairs. So again, I name them: Ray, Sarah, Lenny, Will, John, Barbara. Their like shall not come again. But your like is here today, the current stewards of the church. Congregational polity is not just a historical term, it's an inheritance of the centuries granted us by rebellious Brits who refuse to allow bishops or priests or any distant hierarchical body make decisions about their churches for them. Not with the worship style, not the prayers, not who would serve them as clergy, not where they would put their churches or establish their congregations, and not what they would do with their spiritual or administrative lives and ownings. We are Congregationalists. You are Congregationalists. You're Unitarian Universalists, but you are Congregationalists, and that fact is indisputable and essential to our religious and institutional identity. I beg you all to understand that while my position as parish minister carries with it a lot of professional authority granted to me by the congregation, the church and everything in it are yours. You, the voting members of this church, are its legal and spiritual owners. That's why when we talk about serving on the board, serving in these leadership teams, it's so serious, right? You understand, I am not a member of this church, nor should I be. I serve you, the congregation, by virtue of your vote in 2013, and I am called, not hired, called, to help you fulfill the mission and vision as you define it and refine it. The leadership and the authority, the power and the glory, are the people's, who must know yourselves empowered and obligated to understand how this church works, how it funds its operations, how it determines its future course, how decisions are made. We all understand and accept, as Mary said, we are in an era all over the place of dwindling volunteer commitment to many civic organizations. Well, this one, which has lasted since the 17th century and weathered many societal shifts, cannot function with integrity to its bylaws or its purpose if it is not guided and stewarded and fully owned by its lay members. Please consider this, therefore, a heartfelt exhortation to congregational engagement. We have change a-coming, and the board has stewarded the congregation and the church brilliantly through the negotiations with the town of Swampscott, but we got traffic coming in beginning in August as that school opens. I have some ideas, but I need to collaborate with you. I need you to come to meetings and have conversations and make the time for us to do discernment work together. I want to remind you, if you didn't know this, a historical title for the settled minister of our congregations was, and I love this term, Chief Teaching Elder. I am currently among active Unitarian Universalist clergy, one of the most knowledgeable about the history and practice of Congregationalism. I'm not tooting my own horn, I'm just a big nerd, a big obsessed nerd. I got my doctorate in Congregationalism and the covenant tradition, so I am sounding the alarm everywhere with all congregationally based churches about its preservation and integrity in this era, because I love it and honor it. I am at your service in investigating how to strengthen and enliven it. And I thank you for listening to that. I have to name some special thanks because, again, so many of the people that we should be thanking have submitted those reports to the annual report, and I do, again, hope that you will read them. The worship life of the church is its biggest program. It is a program, and it is an ongoing responsibility, privilege, stress, and honor. And I share the responsibility and honor with an amazing music team and the choir. Chiefly the choir who commits to gathering twice a week to make this beautiful music program happen, led by our wonderful music director, Kenneth, and assisted by David Collins, these are brilliant artists, all of them, and they deserve our thanks, and thank them personally, if you would, please. Misha has been beautifying the church visually through her floral arrangements and is always walking around and seeing where she can create a little spot of beauty somewhere. Jason Gatlin, with your commitment to our live streaming and behind that camera every week almost, thank you so much. I do have a gift for you and Mary. It's in a big cooler, but it's not something we're allowed to actually have in the building, but I think it's because the bottles are not open. I think we're good, but we do hope that will give you some summer cheer by the lake this summer. I want to thank those who have committed to the Ministry of Pastoral Caregiving, who are the Slater sisters, Tracy and Kelly, Bob D'Addario, Gloria Kozlowski, Ruth Griffin, and Paula Innes. And I also thank you to Ruth and Jack Butterworth for being worship associates this year as well, and filling in to support pulpit guests when I'm not here. And I do thank the board. I thanked them in my written report. I mean it with all my heart. What an amazing team of people. And I want to say to all of you on behalf of our staff, who are such a delight for me to work with, that we love working with you and for you. And that's Elizabeth Muller, Angie Kern, my partner in ministry, Reverend Chris Scheller, such a stalwart. As I said, Kenneth and David, Mary Keene Galtieri, Mike Michaud and Jen Hill, and all of the sexton and staff, Chris Hansen, who is handling our grants and scholarships. And as you heard, that's a big, big job. That's not a few bucks. That's a really big program of this church. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of laughter, even in the hard times, and we grieve and celebrate together. We're grateful to serve all of you and to serve this august institution. I think that's it for me. Thanks. You have
I got the sense that Mary was about to adjourn, so I had to pause her for a moment. Yes. Although we have not figured out who or how we will fill your shoes, which is going to be a task because you've done such an amazing job. That's not what I meant. The board just could not allow you to roll off as board president without acknowledging the time, the talent, as Tom so eloquently said, and the love that you have poured into this congregation. So thank you so, so much for that. We have a little watering can for you, so you can nurture your plants like you nurture us, and then something so that you and Jason and fam can go out and have a little something to eat. Great. Yes, you are welcome.
All right, I think we've had enough business. At this time, I would like to open the floor to anyone who has questions or comments or thoughts that they would like to share as we close out another church year. All right. If there is no further business to come before this meeting, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? All right. All in favor? Good. Anyone opposed to us wrapping this up? Okay. Thank you all. We are adjourned, and after the benediction, please join us in the parish hall for a fellowship hour hosted by the board.
The song that we're going to sing for you is called As Torrents in Summer by Elgar, and we talked a little bit as a choir about just the meaning of this text right before our time here with you. And one of the themes, or a number of the themes that came out, were hope, and resilience, and this idea that we've been through a lot as a congregation and as a community this year, and that we wanted to leave you a bit of a balm and love and appreciation, and know that, as the text says, even though the sky is still cloudless, the rain is falling somewhere, nurturing the earth and our community, and filling all our love tanks up with love.
We have gathered in the spirit of hope, service, gratitude, and love, and so do we depart. With gratitude for our living tradition and those who carry it forward through this church. Let the people say, Amen and Amen.